Okay, we're going to start the meeting. Monday, November 6, 2017, at 8 p.m., Commissioner Chamber, 500 Southwest, 109th Avenue. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Clerk will note the absence of Commissioner Borrero.
Excuse me? We have two commissioners. Oh, he's
Commissioner
here?
Borrero. Borrero.
Okay, let's send that for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Invocation.
Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you now, Lord, and we just give you thanks for being able to gather here, Father, and just make the decisions that are best for the city, dear Lord. Lord, right now we extend our hearts, Lord, and our prayers to the people of Texas, Lord, in the 28-person massacre that occurred at a church yesterday, dear Father. Lord, we pray that you be with each and every one of their families, Lord. We pray that you be with the fire rescue and the police officers who responded, dear Father, and everybody who was involved in the investigation. Lord, we pray that you bless them and that you give them the wisdom to make the right choices, dear Father, and to really be able to comprehend the situation at hand, dear Father. Lord, again, I pray for that same understanding here in the city, Lord, so that we may make the best decisions for our city. Lord, we pray for in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Now we have the special, a special presentation. Now, A, presentation of proclamation by Commissioner Duazo.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a presentation of 3 proclamations for a lot of hard work. They are 3 proclamations presented to Chief Diaz, to Major Carmona, and to Assistant Chief Herbello. They're presented on behalf of Commissioner Duazo. I'm going to go ahead and read right from the proclamation. Proclamation by the City of Sweetwater Commissioner Duazo. Whereas City of Sweetwater Commissioner Manuel Duazo would like to recognize the commitment to service as it pertains to the Florida Law Enforcement Accreditation of the City of Sweetwater Police Department. And whereas it is important that all citizens acknowledge and understand the necessity and importance of acquiring and achieving statewide Florida Law Enforcement Accreditation. And whereas Chief of Police Placido Diaz, Major Carmona, and Assistant Chief Herbello have been effective and outstanding leaders who made a formal commitment and were instrumental in achieving the Florida Law Enforcement Accreditation for the City of Sweetwater Police Department. And as Chief of Police Placido Diaz, Major Achilles Carmona, and Assistant Chief Herbello initiated the process of statewide certification on October 31st, 2016, and has presently met all standards for accreditation. Whereas there are few Florida law enforcement agencies who can claim the honor of having achieved the Florida Law Enforcement Accreditation, the City of Sweetwater Police Department will be publicly presented to other agencies as an example of law enforcement best practices and standards. And whereas as a result of having achieved the Florida Law Enforcement Accreditation, the City of Sweetwater Police Department will be counted among community-oriented police departments who exist only to build public trust within the community they serve and protect. Whereas, as a result of having achieved the Florida Law Enforcement Accreditation, the Sweetwater Police Department will be recognized by other law enforcement organizations as an ethics-driven law enforcement organization. Whereas, as a result of having achieved the Florida Law Enforcement Accreditation, the Sweetwater Police Department will be eligible for grants and funding not previously available. Whereas for the first time in Sweetwater history, the City of Sweetwater Police Department has achieved required standards and will be accredited by the Commission of Florida Law Enforcement Accreditation. Now therefore, Commissioner Duaso, by virtue of the authority vested in him as Commissioner, I do, Commissioner Duaso, hereby proclaim November 6, 2017 as Placido Diaz Chief of Police Day, Major Achilles Carmona Day, and Assistant Chief Herbello Day for the outstanding contribution to the City of Sweetwater and its community.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. You get another one? You want to get in closer or out the other?
Go ahead and take this one just for the...
So also say cheese. All right, we got a few.
Let me just say a couple of quick words. Decir dos o tres palabritas para no apagar. Quiero decirle unas palabras well, let me start in English. I want to say a couple of words to the Commission, the Mayor, all of the police officers, and all of the hard-working men and women of the City of Sweetwater Police Department that have made this happen. This isn't something that was done by one individual. It was done as a result of a huge team effort. This means a great deal to not only the administration, the Commission, the residents, and the men and women of the police department. This sets a bar that is higher, or a higher standard than the norm. This tells the people, the community, the residents that you now have a professionally recognized police department. They went through the entire department with a fine-tooth comb, scrutinized it more so than they would any other agency because of obviously the history that has unfortunately followed this department for many years. I can tell you that there was no slack cut whatsoever. They dug into every nook and cranny of policy, of structure, of infrastructure, of training, and I'm proud to say out of 3 agencies that were up there for initial accreditation, we were the only one that received unconditional accreditation. That says a lot for these hard-working men and women, and I'm very proud to lead them into the next phase and the next stage in evolution. And I want to thank everybody here for their support, both in the last session where we had all the monies approved and we got more officers. I look forward to working with everyone here again. And the mayor, I got to thank him for being pretty much hands-off and allowing me to make this department what it is today. And thank the commission for having looked at us fondly and funding us properly and allow us to go to that next level. So I want to thank everybody, and I want a round of applause for all of the officers, those that are here and those that weren't able to be here today. Thank you.
Pastor,
I want to recognize Father Felix, if he wants to say a couple of words. He's also been part of our new chaplaincy corps, which is also an intricate part of our new structure in the police department. He's been a world of support in all endeavors, including and not limited to the past storm. So I want to thank you for being here. I also want to recognize one more person who's here, who's Pete from Dolphin Mall, the general manager. Pete has become an amazing public partner and private friend who, from the onset, we faced many challenges together because of the new mindset and mission we had in mind, and different styles of management. But I can tell you that we have developed an amazing relationship, and I'm very proud to say that together we have avoided many incidents and are proactively moving forward and working on the safety for our residents around the community. Thank you, Pete.
bueno, buenas noches a todos. Gracias por la oportunidad de estar aquí. Y también pues traigo un saludo de parte del pastor Ralph de Calvary. Él no está con nosotros hoy porque está atendiendo una conferencia en California. Y me siento pues realmente privilegiado de poder hacer lo poquito que estamos haciendo, ¿verdad? Un granito de arena trabajando un poco con el Departamento de Policía de la ciudad, dándole este apoyo, este soporte. Para mí ha sido una experiencia nueva y realmente creo que la estoy disfrutando, ¿verdad? Ha sido muy bueno poder reunirme con ellos, poder orar, ¿verdad? Poder acompañarlos en algunas ocasiones también. Y me siento muy agradecido a Dios de saber que ahora tenemos un departamento de policía acreditado profesionalmente. Yo creo que uno debe de ser profesional en todo lo que hace. Y eso para mí ha sido un síntoma muy bueno de que la ciudad está caminando hacia algo mucho mejor. Me siento muy agradecido por eso, de veras les felicito a todos. Y créanme, estoy diciendo la mirada de los que estamos afuera, ¿verdad? La ciudad lo ha notado, ¿verdad? En la calle se nota que el departamento de policía de la ciudad realmente está haciendo algo diferente. Así que les felicito de verdad de todo corazón. Y hoy traigo una corbata negra, ¿verdad? Esta corbata la uso cuando voy a un funeral. Y realmente así me siento hoy, ¿verdad? La familia de Faye hoy está de luto por todo lo que sucedió ayer en Texas, ¿verdad? Muchas personas pues partieron de este mundo y morir es parte de la vida, pero no nos resignamos a que las personas se nos tengan que ir bajo las condiciones que se fueron personas ayer, ¿verdad? Así que qué importante es tener una buena ciudad, un buen departamento de policía, que juntos podamos luchar por ver una ciudad mejor, unas calles mejores, ¿verdad? Para todos nosotros, para nuestros hijos, para que todo ciudadano de esta comunidad se pueda sentir seguro. Así que les felicito y al mismo tiempo les animo a que lo puedan hacer cada día mejor. Si me permiten, pues hago una oración a favor, ¿verdad?, de la ciudad, a favor del departamento de policía. Señor, te damos gracias en esta noche por la oportunidad que tú nos das de estar en este lugar. Y te agradecemos tanto, Señor, el ver cómo nuestra ciudad está dando pasos hacia adelante, Señor. Te agradezco por la oportunidad que me das de poner mi granito de arena en todas estas cosas, Señor. Y verdaderamente nos regocijamos al ver cómo nuestro departamento de policía ha podido obtener esta acreditación que nos dice que ahora son un departamento profesional, Señor. Eso quiere decir que somos buenos en lo que hacemos, Señor. Y rogamos porque cada día lo podamos hacer mejor, porque siempre, Padre, podamos hacer un buen equipo todos juntos, desde el lugar donde tú nos has puesto, el gobierno, la policía, la iglesia, los bomberos, los médicos, donde quiera que tú nos lleves, Señor, de todas partes, que juntos podamos hacer un gran trabajo para ver una comunidad feliz, para ver una comunidad bendecida, Señor. Ruego que tú siempre traigas sabiduría de lo alto a todas las personas. Bendecimos en tu nombre, Señor, a cada funcionario que tú has puesto en este lugar, a cada oficial que tú has puesto en este lugar, Señor. Que tu bendición pueda ser sobre sus vidas, que tu protección pueda estar siempre, Señor, con cada uno de ellos. Ayúdanos a todos, te necesitamos, oh Dios. Queremos una ciudad buena, queremos una ciudad, Señor, tranquila, queremos una ciudad próspera, Señor. Oramos para que esto siga siendo una realidad cada día. En tus manos estamos y te lo pedimos en el nombre de Cristo Jesús. Amén.
Amén.
Gracias a todos.
Okay, B, I'm going to move, refer this to the next meeting.
Sure.
Through the chair.
Yes.
I definitely want to congratulate the City of Sweetwater Police Department, the command staff, and the rank and file for this momentous achievement. This is something that the department has been striving for 2 years, and actually longer than that. But this is just the first step. I think obviously now we need to keep this accreditation, and that's hard enough as it is. I have all the faith in the world in the police department, the command staff, the rank and file, the men and women who are dedicated in going through this process. This is a very rigorous process that I'm very well aware of. I think Lieutenant Werves did a phenomenal job in getting us there, and the rest of the command staff, and I definitely want to commend Lieutenant Werves. I know how hard this process was because I was part of this process for 1.5 years. And when I left in, I think, March 1st, and then the mock assessment was in August, I was a little disappointed that none of the commissioners, well, I can't speak on behalf of any of the commissioners. Were any of the commissioners invited to the accreditation process? Okay, neither was I. So that I was very disappointed in. I think everybody here knows that I take things very personal, obviously in the city, but more so in the police department. And to not even get an invite, well, that kind of pissed me off. So hopefully, moving forward, we can move from the political minutia and maybe we can hold hands politically for the betterment of our city, especially when it comes to our police department, and such a momentous and truly merited achievement for the police department. This is, I think this is just the first of many great steps for the police department. But I do want to make it known that we should have at least gotten an invite. So whoever dropped the ball on that, not happy about it.
Let me just say one thing. First of all, there's one thing I do agree in common. First of all, that this is not and should not be a political issue. I think that this is a moment to be proud of the police department and set all and everything aside. The fact of the matter is that not only were we prepared and we went through this rigorous process through very difficult and stressful situations, but we have also bought into the program for the next 4 years. And I'll go ahead and make an announcement now, and I haven't even mentioned it to him or anybody else for that matter. The Officer of the Month for this month is going to be Lieutenant Werbs. The fact of the matter is he took the bull by the horns. I put an enormous amount of work on his back, and that man has worked 13, 14 hours a day and never flinched for a minute. Again, the process has been rigorous. He has taken the bull by the horns. We've invested hundreds of hours sitting in that conference room, rewriting policy, rewriting the books, rewriting manuals, up until the day of the last day when we were actually participating during the assessment. Whatever hairs J.P. Werbs had left, which he has none, he was pulling them because we were down fixing policy up until the last minute. But this all paid off, and we can't lose sight of how important this is for not only the commission, the administration, but for the residents. The message has to resonate that this is a unified body and that the police department is autonomous, and we're here for everyone, including the community. So let's not lose sight of that. Whatever differences there are, these are not the times to express the differences or confront them. Let's enjoy what we've just done. I really believe that, and that's just my recommendation. This has been 2 years of very hard work. And again, I want to nominate Lieutenant Werbs for Officer of the Month for all his hard work.
Now we have presentation of Employee of the Month award.
Yeah, I had actually deferred last month. And for last month, I'd like to name the entire maintenance department because they really did a phenomenal job from the date of the storm all the way through present day. I couldn't single it out to be one person, so I decided to give it to the entire department. And for this month, for the month of October, by the same merits, I'm giving it to the complete police administration staff. As everything has just been said, they've done a phenomenal job of being able to go through all the leaps and bounds and all the hurdles that were placed to be able to get the city to a fine accreditation that, as everybody said, it's the first time in history. This is something that nobody ever thought the city was ever able to do. So for that reason, I am trying to recommend the entire police administration staff for Officer of the Month for the month of October.
Now it's for number 6, presentation of Officer of the Month award. Well, say it
Again, I want to reiterate, I want to recognize Lieutenant Werbs for all his hard work and endeavors and his thankless hours that he spent working on this process. And again, I want to thank him for being a part of my team. Thank you.
Chief, you had also the Officer of the Month was also deferred from last month.
Yes, he's not here today, so we're going to defer that one, and I'll announce him next month.
Okay, thank you. 7, reports of officers, boards, and committees. Okay, now we have number 8, addition and deletion to the agenda.
To the Chair, I have a addition C to the consent agenda, as well as item L to the staff items.
C and
L, C to the consent agenda and L to the staff items. Oh, I'm deleting A as well, A in staff items.
so you're deleting A?
I'm deleting A in the staff items.
Okay.
I'm adding C to the consent agenda and adding L to the staff items. Thank you. Thank you, Ralph.
Okay, I want to move item E and H. I want to move it to from the staff items from the agenda. Does anybody else has anything else? Okay, so we have a motion. move this item?
Madam President, you need,
Need a second, ma'am?
Sure.
I'll give you a second.
I didn't know what you were talking about.
No, because we have to have a motion because I'm moving E and H
I'll give you a second, ma'am.
Pero you
move.
EH, where?
from a staff item in front of the agenda. I'm moving them in
Oh,
front.
you moving up?
Yes, moving up.
Okay, moving up, okay.
the motion setting your agenda, Madam President, is basically,
And-
as the mayor requested, to delete staff item A, add item C to the consent agenda, and item L to staff items.
Okay.
So that would be, so that's the motion. I believe you also have a second.
We still have a second, okay? All in favor?
Aye.
Do we have any petitions?
Any speakers?
We don't have any petitions?
No.
No?
Speakers.
No petition and communication, okay? So we have number 10, consent agenda.
So-
Second.
Sec- okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we have A. Approval of the minutes of, no, approvals of the minutes for commission meeting.
Actually,
You already voted
Madam
on it.
President,
Oh,
you-
we already,
you
we
go-
already
You
move
go to,
on.
you go to staff item B.
B, oh, sorry.
No, E.
E, she
Oh,
moved
E,
exactly.
E, because I moved E and H.
Understood.
Yes.
Okay, E. A resolution, the city of Seawater authorizing mayor to enter into a lease agreement with Bancorp Bank for lease of certain utilities vehicles, providing authorization, providing source of funds, and providing the effective date, Mayor Lopez.
Move.
Let's,
This
let's
is,
explain what it is.
Okay, through the chair, ma'am.
Go ahead.
This has, we've been discussing now for a better part of a year. This is the purchase of 13 SUV vehicles. They will be Ford Explorers. They will be purchased from using state forfeiture monies. The negotiations that were done with Bancorp, the leasing agency, who, it's a 5-year term with a dollar buyout. We don't make one of the fantastic things that was negotiated with them is that we don't make our first payment for a year and a day. If we purchase the cars now, as the administration wishes, we should probably receive the cars sometime around March or April, putting that the first payment will not occur until March or April of 2019 on the 365th day plus 1 day. They defer payments for 1 year, so then the 5-year lease begins at that point in time. So it's actually, in theory, it's a 6-year lease, but you don't make your first payment for the first year. Chief has more information on the vehicles and the package and everything that we're doing.
We basically piggybacked off the sheriff's bid, which is the best competitive bid available. I've discussed in short with most of the commissioners the details on the financing. And, I mean, I've been talking to the mayor earlier today. I just backdropped some numbers, and it's incredible the terms that we're getting. I mean, the return on the money that these people are investing is under 3.28%. This is, and again, the resolution was crafted in a manner that I discussed with the administration. I'm not sure if the city attorney got a look at it, but it lends latitude to the commission to designate when and how they're going to make the payment, only because this will not impact this fiscal year. It's a decision the commission has to make next fiscal year. So the way it's crafted is, in short, the funding source and how it's funded, it's going to be up to the commission when they budget next year. You can take federal forfeiture, state forfeiture, whatever monies you all decide, that's your decision. So we left that open so that you guys can make that decision at the pertinent time. It's not a decision to be made right now.
Through the chair. But just to confirm, during this last budget meeting, or budget that we approved, we did have the monies for these vehicles allocated in the state forfeiture account, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and we've done projections on where and how the monies are going to be coming in. Based on the monies we've tagged, we're very confident that we'll have the funding for the cars.
Okay.
But again, since it's not impacting this fiscal year, it's prudent to leave the latitude open for the commission to make that decision at the proper time.
I
And
understand.
the language was added into that.
So how many, through the chair, how many total vehicles?
13
13, 4 Explorers?
Ford Explorers, yes, sir.
What are the others?
They're all Ford Explorers.
You said 4 are Ford Explorers?
13.
13.
13 are all Ford
Ford.
Explorers.
Okay.
That is the probably the most popular vehicle right now, And given that we have our flooding issues here, we don't want to go on the high end for the Tahoes. I think they're too expensive. They're very gas guzzling vehicles. These are cost effective. I want to say they're going to save us a good percentage in fuel. Just based on the numbers, we'll be able to retire the equivalent of those vehicles. And all around, it just changes the image for the city. We have the money to do it, and I think it's time to move forward.
So what's the total dollar value?
Total dollar value is on the, okay, on 13 cars, it's $109,477.68 per year.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
$109,477.68 per year. The base cost, or the base price for the vehicle is $36,160.46. Cost of financing is $5,946.34, which is the equivalent of 3.28% return on the money of investment for the company that they're making, which is, again, ludicrous what they're making. So I don't know where they're making the money.
crazy
Again,
financing.
the cost of financing is equivalent of about $11.89 per year, 3.28% return on their money.
$11.89
And that's,
per year.
yeah, and these numbers I did over a 5-year period. Realistically, it should be over a 6-year period because we are not making one payment for a year and a day. So if you insert that figure into the equation, the return is probably under 3%.
Yeah, I'm a little bit lost with the numbers, to be honest with you.
Okay.
What I would like to have preferred to see, or like to see, was as a table showing the fiscal impact on a per-year basis.
It's 109,477.68, worst case scenario. Best case scenario would be about $3,000 under that. 109,477.68.
Through the chair.
Go ahead.
But to clarify something, there is no fiscal impact for 2 years. These monies are going to be used from forfeiture funds right now. In the case that there would be no future forfeiture funds, which it doesn't look like it because there's a certain amount of monies that are already committed that should come in the following year, then they will have to be budgeted in future budgets, but there is no fiscal impact to the budget at this moment.
That is correct. There is no fiscal impact to the budget. Based on our projections, there will be more than ample monies available from the forfeiture and seizures, and right now we have 2 active forfeiture detectives they're doing their jobs.
I'm not one that's typically in the habit of buying now, paying later. I like buying now, paying now. Why don't we pay now?
Because we're not getting invoiced now. We're not going to get invoiced for a year and a day after the fact. That's just the way the program works. The company is not going to get paid until 1 year exactly after the vehicles are delivered. So if we get the vehicles delivered in March, you won't get them delivered for the following year, until the following year. You can't pay for it up front.
This financing option that was negotiated with the bank is such a fantastic deal that you can't fight with your own money. Why are you going to pay for something now that they are financing over a period of 6 years for such little amount of money?
Yeah, and
Just
again,
like any credit card, you want to pay it off now.
well,
No.
there's also another, let me just add a little bit to that. The reasoning behind that is it allows us the latitude and the possibility of going forward, entering into another arrangement with the same company for the next 2 or 3 years to attrition the entire vehicle fleet out. So it makes sense to build a relationship based on our projections and forecast of money income from the forfeiture accounts in order to replace the entire fleet. And our projection and our hope is in the next 3 or 4 years to replace the entire fleet.
So we'll use next year's money, and this year's money will not be touched for forfeiture funds.
That's my goal. My goal is to have a base and have an account there that we can count on as a reserve, if you will. But yeah, our projections are solid. We believe that we're going to have ample funds to fund them. But again, that's why I leave the latitude to the commission to make the decision at the time when they do prepare the budget for next year. Again, it all goes back to dollars and cents, and you can't pass next year's budget today.
Through the chair.
The attorney was asking.
Oh, was he?
Yes.
Go ahead.
But go ahead if you want to give you your.
Go ahead, sir.
turn.
I'll wait.
I'll talk after you.
No, I just wanted to recommend an amendment to the item for clarity. And that is in section number 1, to basically, for it to read as follows: the mayor is authorized to enter into a 6-year lease agreement with Bancorp, not inconsistent with the attached quote, and is further authorized to draw funds not to exceed $109,477.68, starting in year 2 from state forfeiture accounts. That way you have your annual amount that starts on year 2 here. The authority has been provided specifically for that expenditure, and that way we don't leave anything to guesswork, and again, you have the amount that are gonna be drawn starting on year 2 in the resolution. That would be a suggestion that I make
Do
to add
you-
clarity to the item.
Do you want to say year two, or do you want to put 1 year plus a day from delivery? Because that's
Maybe
when
when
we
it
make the
becomes
first payment,
due
we
pursuant
make
to
the
the contract or
permit,
lease agreement?
the contract is that we make the first payment 365 days, a year plus 1 day later.
So maybe a language that says pursuant to the lease agreement on or about the day of delivery.
A year after the,
And I would say basically for the mayor's further authorized to draw funds from state forfeitures in the amount of $109,400, not to exceed $109,477.68, beginning exactly 1 year after delivery of the vehicles.
You also want to leave language in there with the latitude for the commission to define otherwise other funds. Because remember, we might get state forfeiture, federal forfeiture, so that's why we left the language, whereas it would be designated by the
it
commission.
can come
at
out
the
of
time.
state, it can come out of federal,
Correct.
Through the chair.
after the fact. Right now, it's assigning the purchase, the state agreement, and leaving the
Leave it
latitude
open
for the
commission
assignment
to
of funds
make that
later.
determination.
Well, you can have the authority to do this to basically determine whether it's going to be state or federal forfeiture or both. You can have it here. You are broad in your whereas, so you can basically make the, just specify that it's from state forfeiture and/or federal forfeiture funds. That way, it's either or both. That way, you have that flexibility. So the commissioner's giving the administration the flexibility to draw
Yeah, to
at
not
least
narrow
that
it
specific
down
amount of
to-
funds.
Down
Exactly.
the road for fiscal year 17-18 is what you're saying.
Exactly, and
Okay.
in the
No,
upcoming.
18-19.
In the upcoming.
18-19,
18-19
sorry,
and
you're
then
right.
19-20.
In the
Okay.
upcoming budget years, at that point, you can establish how much you're gonna draw from state and how much you're gonna draw from federal
Okay,
forfeiture funds.
I understand.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, ma'am. Chief, just so I understand, this is $109,477.68 allocation, correct?
Per year.
Per year,
That's
times 5 years.
5, that's correct.
So $547,385 over a 5-year period. Okay. So if it was just 109,000, this is where I need a little clarification. I did a mathematical equation here. $109,000 on a lease over 13 vehicles, is that correct?
13, that's what we're asking for.
That comes out to $701 a month. Are those the numbers more or less you have?
I haven't broken it down by month, I just did this right before I came over to the meeting, but I'd have to sit back and do the calculations per month, but you may be correct. It's around there, round about right.
So, basically, in a nutshell, we're gonna pay $547,000 for 13 vehicles. Let's just do some math here. 547, 385, divided by 13, comes out to $42,000.
That's correct, $42,106.80.
So the vehicles are roughly 27,000.
No, 36,160 when you take into account that you have to uplift the vehicles with all the...
I'm aware of that. I was getting to that breakdown. So the vehicle's 27,127, and now to outfit the vehicle, because you're buying a police package Explorer, correct?
That's correct, with the uplifted suspension and traction and so forth. It's the
About
police
$10,000
package.
in equipment.
All right, I know we have $180,000 right now in state seizure forfeiture. But basically what you're looking for is the 18-19 budget for us to pay through state seizure forfeiture, giving us a balance of roughly $70,000. And then from there, the commission hopefully will add that to future fiscal budgets. Is that
Well,
your intention?
No, my intention is to give the latitude to the commission to fund this as they will. My projections are, and my hope would be that we can use the state or federal forfeiture funds for this, but I wanted to leave the latitude for the commission to do as they wish. If for some reason the budget increases to X and the commission feels that they want to buy more vehicles, then I think you should be afforded the opportunity to allocate such funds to do that. As you know, what we want to avoid, and the reason I wanted that language in there, it wasn't there before, is because I want to avoid any possibility of supplanting monies. So I want the commission to have the latitude to make changes from funding sources at will. If the commission decides we're going to buy 20 cars next year because our ad valorem base went up by $2 million, you should be afforded that opportunity. If we can't, then we have to limit ourselves to the $109,477.68 per year, then we have the forfeiture money there.
All right. Well, we definitely need a new fleet. All right, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, no.
Through the chair.
I would, go ahead.
Are these the only costs? These are all the costs that are wrapped into that 547?
This is all in, including striping, labeling, everything. This is all in.
This is, through the chair, this is turnkey. Once we purchase the cars, the leasing company probably receives the cars about 3 months later. Then they are in charge of paying for all the retrofitting, the striping, everything. Once we get the car, it's completely turnkey, ready to hit the road.
Yeah, it comes with
The
a warranty.
important thing is also just the
And the
commission.
warranty starts that day.
Yeah,
Warranty
absolutely.
starts the day that we accept delivery, as
The other-
well as the financing. Like I'm saying, if the purchase is agreed today, we probably will not receive the cars until March or April.
What about maintenance?
The cars have 3 years maintenance, that's 100% covered by the vehicle. Afterwards, we can purchase maintenance packages on the vehicles, but that's something that the commission can decide at a later date. It just has to be done within the first 3 years.
Yeah, and historically, the maintenance packages, unfortunately, even in the private sector, they tend to expire at the perfect time when the actual warranty's over is when you start having problems. So I wouldn't recommend purchasing the extended warranty. These cars are rigid and they're built to last. As you
They're
can
meant to
see,
last.
Even the vehicles that we've recently gotten over the last 2 years from the city of Miami that were attrition vehicles over 7 years, they're still in fairly decent shape. I don't foresee these vehicles having a problem for at least 7 years, 8 years. So I think we're in very good shape.
Through the chair.
Go ahead.
I have a quick question. When I look at the invoice for the vehicle, when it gets down to the total price on the second page, it says $27,521.75.
Yes.
And then when I look at your breakdown on the back, or rather, Bancorp's breakdown, it says the vehicle is $27,127. Is there a $400 discrepancy that I'm missing?
Wait, hold on one second, sir.
Looks like a clerical error.
It looks like a clerical error because you have two different figures here. I did not generate this. I based my numbers on the latter, which is $400 difference. You're absolutely right. However, I can also say that the $109,000 figure, I also overestimated. So if there is a difference of $400 up or down, it's included in the $109,477.68.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion.
I move, nobody.
You move, hold on.
I move.
I'm gonna, I have a second, I'm gonna put a second, but as amended. Okay, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Through the chair, just one final question. At the end of this 5 years, we have a buyback, correct?
Dollar buyout.
So for $1, at the end of 5 years, we get the vehicle, since
Yes,
we
sir.
already paid basically $500,000 for the 13 cars. Got it. Okay, I'm good.
Roll call,
Yes,
Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Yes.
Commissioner Borrero?
Yes.
Commissioner Duazo?
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz?
Yes.
Commissioner Barredo?
Yes.
Commissioner Holtz Alonso?
Yes.
President Ñaño?
Yes, and thank you. I was waiting for that for a long time.
Thank you, Commissioners, for your support in this.
Okay, so we're gonna go to H.
Commissioners, this item, I'll go ahead and speak on it. This is,
Let me just go ahead and read first.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you need to go.
No,
Give me
no.
a second. A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Seawater, Florida, authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with 2 men and a truck for moving services, authorizing the expenditure of funds and providing an effective date. Mayor Lopez, go ahead, please, sir.
Through the chair, we received 3 quotes, the one being the most responsible at the prices is from 2 men in a truck to be able to move all the desks and the filing cabinets from the current GIU office to the offices in the rear of the building where we will be currently situating GIU.
Hold on. Okay, we're going to the less expensive one, that.
Correct.
1,000.
Yeah, 2 men in a truck.
Okay, we have
a motion by Commissioner Villanueva.
a second by Commissioner Duazo. So please roll call.
Commissioner Borrero?
Yes.
Commissioner Duazo?
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz?
Yes.
Commissioner Barredo?
Yes.
Commissioner Holtz Alonso?
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Yes.
President Ñaño?
Yes.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna go to K, which is request for mitigation of accumulated penalties, Dolphin Mac LLC, City Attorney.
This item was added to the agenda at the request of Dolmax attorney, Mr. Juan Mayol. And before Mr. Mayol begins his presentation, I want to go ahead and remind the commission and the administration that that the mayor has limited authority in as provided by ordinance and by rule as to how much he's able to mitigate fines and liens once compliance has been achieved. In the past, you've had at least one individual that I can think of that appealed directly to the commission and requested mitigation of those fines and liens. I recommend, and I wanted just to go ahead and at this point echo the recommendation that I made before, which is basically to allow the administration greater flexibility, perhaps up to right now. I think you're up to 10%.
That is correct.
Exactly. So, and because some of the accumulation of fines can be quite steep and quite severe, it may make sense to amend the existing rules and allow administration perhaps from 2.5% up, and let administration kind of mitigate those fines, at least with that flexibility. It's a recommendation that I make. Otherwise, whenever you have some level of fines and or liens that are excessive, the commission can expect requests similar to this, because they can be handled administratively for a certain amount, except for the 10% threshold.
Correct.
So I don't know whether it's the administration or the commission, but I'll be happy to provide amendments to the existing rule to give the administration that flexibility and have those requests be disposed administratively, as opposed to individually, come to the commission. It's entirely up to the commission. I just wanted to go ahead and bring that to your attention, because I know it was discussed in the past, but I have not received any directive or request to go ahead and make those changes, to prepare those changes for board approval. Again, allowing the administration greater latitude in mitigating those fines and liens.
Through the chair. We had a conversation on this a couple of months ago, and that's exactly what I was telling you, that this ordinance should be amended to grant me greater latitude. It was your opinion back then that it shouldn't be done. Your opinion back then is actually different than it is right now. Your opinion back then said, no, the ordinance is drafted this way so that this is the latitude that you have, and if the appellee, the appellate party, doesn't agree with what's limited to the ordinance, then they have the option of limiting to appealing to the commission. That's the conversation that we had before that, where I actually agree with the statement you're making today, which is the part that I pitched to you, you did not agree with.
No, Mr. Mayor, what we were talking about was a specific request that was being made at that time, and because at that time, which it applies now, you have limited ability to up to, I think it's at 10%, that's a threshold. You couldn't do it back then. I was basically outlining that because you don't have that authority, the only one that can do it is the commission.
Correct, and in that case, that client had already appealed, and what was granted was a 10%. He did not suit it, so then he did it here.
Exactly, that could be it. But even at that time, when that appeal took place, I do recall advising the commission at that point that to grant you that flexibility. I apologize for the confusion, but I was always a proponent that you should have that flexibility to avoid multiple requests for fines and liens just to come to the commission. So,
which was my stance before.
Through the chair.
Go ahead.
Can we get a background on the facts, please?
Madam Vice Mayor, Mr. Mayor, members of the Commission, Juan Mayol, along with my colleague Alex Arias, representing Dolph-Mac LLC. Mr. Tony Gonzalez, who's the mayor of Dolph-Mac, joins us tonight. This is a very straightforward request. It applies to a property located at 10875 Northwest 7th Street. Property has been improved with a warehouse for about 6 or 7 years. And the item relates to two alleged very minor violations, code violations, that date back to 2015. One of them dates back to April of 2015. The other one dates back to December of 2015. One related to the restriping of a parking lot at the warehouse without a permit, and the other one relates to excessive garbage, excessive debris in one of the dumpsters, again dating back to 2015. Apparently at the time, there was a glass operation that had used the dumpster. It was overfilled, and someone complained, so the inspector went out and issued a violation. Both violations were immediately corrected once DolphMac became aware of the violations, and so therefore compliance was achieved. The goal of any code enforcement regulation is to achieve compliance, and I want to go through your regulations in some detail. But notice is central to compliance. The problem in these two cases is that DolphMac never received notice of the violation. Actually, never received the warning notice, never received notice of the violation, and so therefore it was never able to avail itself of the ability to either correct the violation immediately or request a notice in front of the hearing officer to dispute the violation. In this case, we would simply not have disputed the violations. We would have corrected the violations immediately. The problem is that the address that was used for the warning notice and for the notice violation was the incorrect address for DolphMac. The DolphMac has had essentially two addresses in the last 7 years. 782 Northwest 42nd Avenue, Suite 300, 782 Northwest 42nd Avenue, Suite 630. And the record of the record's very clear that those have been addresses. I'm going to introduce that into the record. All the background is there. The warning notice and the notices were mailed to an address in Kendall, 13054 Southwest 133rd Court, which is not the address of DolphMac, was not the address of DolphMac back in 2010, not in 2015, nor in 2016. When DolphMac became aware of the two violations, they immediately contacted the city staff, notified them of the correct address, and moved on to correct the violations. I was actually looking through my phone earlier to see how quickly I could come up with DolphMac's addresses online, and we look on Sunbiz DolphMac. A 30-second search on the iPhone revealed the actual address for DolphMac. I don't blame the code enforcement inspector. They relied on the information that was in the property appraiser's website. So it was an innocent mistake. However, the property appraiser website has a disclaimer that indicates that they are constantly updating their records and that the information on the website is not necessarily accurate. So there's a disclaimer as to the possible inaccuracy of those records. And again, a simple search of the Sunbiz records will reveal the actual address. So we would suggest to you that this is not a case where a violator, flagrantly ignore the instructions from a code enforcement inspector. They didn't really know that violation had occurred, and as soon as they became aware of them, correct the violations. So considerations of fair play, equity, due process would justify a complete mitigation of the fines that have been accumulated. I believe the last time I spoke to the city attorney, one of the violations had accumulated something like $300,000 plus in fines. The cost, that's for the restriping of the parking lot. The cost of restriping the parking lot was about $198. The cost of plans and permits was about $300-400, so less than $1,000, and the accumulated penalties are up to $300,000 plus. I know that the mayor has the discretion to mitigate down to 10% of the total accumulated fines, but we felt that even 10% was way too much, and we felt compelled to come before the commission to request mitigation. So we would urge you to consider the fact that they complied as soon as they had notice, and please mitigate the accumulated penalties.
Through the chair. Thank you, sir. Before I make my statement, I'd like to hear what staff or the mayor has to say as far as their request, and then I'd like to come back with a statement, if I may, Madam Chair. You allow?
Yes, go ahead.
Great.
One thing I do want to clear up, that contrary to what Mr. Mayor said, is that the only place that we do actually have to check for, as far as property records, if the company's not registered in the city and we don't have proper address, is Miami-Dade Property Appraisers. That's the only address that we legally have to send and notify. If that was the address that was registered in Property Appraisers, that is really the place that we have to send this. We've had this actually litigated on times before, and this has won. We don't have that responsibility to have to check for Sunbiz. All we have to do is notify the owner of the business as well as the owner of the property, and the owner of the property being if it's not registered in the city, because they don't personally run a business there, that's all we have to check, the Miami-Dade Property Appraiser's office. Besides that, none of this process was actually presented to me, because normally what would happen is that this would be presented through staff, and it didn't. In this case, it was done through the city attorney, which is contrary to the actual process that he put in place. So I was just actually going to sit back and wait to listen, and, where the process actually wasn't filed or done according to what was actually put in place about a year ago.
So if I may, Madam Vice Mayor, just to correct the record, we actually directed a mitigation request to your staff back in September 21st of 2016. And so that was the proper channel to make the request for mitigation, but the request for mitigation was never acted upon. And so as notice is concerned, your code, section 2367, indicates that notice should be sent at the usual place of abode. Also, the property can be posted. This property was never posted. Mr. Gonzalez actually goes by the property frequently. Had the property been posted, they would have known that there was an issue. The code is silent as to what address should be used, other than to say at the usual place of abode. I'm sure that when it says place of abode, it refers to a residential property, but really there's no indication as to whether you should rely on Property Appraiser's a website or not. I'm not saying that it's unreasonable to do that. That is the address on record with the county, but there's a disclaimer in that website as to the accuracy of the information.
Through the chair, I'll let you guys debate and dialogue, but I wanted to hear the mayor and staff's recommendation. So as it stands right now, your client owes $300,000 for a $200 parking lot?
$300,000 plus.
For a $200, okay, that's just stupid.
Right.
Yes.
And I don't think anybody here is trying to, I'll give you the floor. I don't think anybody here is trying to screw you over, sir. Forgive me, I'm less political than most. But I do think that we should capitalize on this instance. This is not the first time that something has squeaked through the cracks, where there's some sort of disconnect, and it's not intentional. Again, they're due to clerical errors. And unfortunately, you've had to acquire counsel and deal with the stress of looking at a potential $300,000 bill. I can't speak on behalf of my colleagues on the commission, but I can tell you, they're all honorable people here. Nobody's here trying to screw you over. But the issue that I have, Madam Chair and Mr. Attorney, if you can help me out here, is as this was just read, we're on B, right?
No,
Okay.
we just, actually, after H, we went to K, so
Hold on a
that's
second.
what we move on.
Yeah.
K.
Okay, so I make a motion to dismiss any fines. We don't have a lien on your property, do we?
There is a lien.
Any fine, and let me know, Mr. Attorney, if I can do this legally, any fines or liens on your property and remedy the situation, is that the proper verbiage, Mr. Attorney?
Yes, it
Sure.
would be to basically, to mitigate all fines and basically remove the existing lien relevant to those fines.
Cool, and before I continue, what was the original fine?
The original fine, I am fairly certain that it was $500 per violation.
Okay, so being that this may violate some sort of due process because it wasn't properly sent, yada, 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 the fact remains that you did in fact spend $200 to stripe a parking lot without pulling a permit. You didn't do it purposely. So can we just dismiss all that, Mr. Attorney? That's my motion. Dismiss any fines and liens.
To mitigate all existing fines
And liens.
And liens.
remove the lien. Okay.
All right, that's my motion.
Through the chair,
Go ahead.
is this the first and only instance that you've been fined for a violation at your property? Okay.
Through the chair. To answer Commissioner Villanueva's question, normally in a process like this, even if you remove all the recurring fines, the city should do its process to recoup the original fine and as well as administrative costs, not waive them all. That's something that could be internally done in the Code Compliance Department. You're saying that one was for restriping the parking lot, the other one was apparently for overflowing debris and stuff like that.
Dumpster, right.
For one of the tenants in the shopping center
Right.
or in the commercial property.
Exactly.
So through the chair. But had you received the warning in time, and that's where I go back to due process, it would have been remedied, and therefore there would be no administrative cost, there would be no fine. I think we can all agree on that. So my next question is, being responsible, have we incurred an administrative cost to this process? Mr. Mayor. Through the chair, Mr. Mayor, sorry.
Yes, there will always be administrative cost. Exactly how much there will be, we would have to get together, or city attorney would have to get together with code compliance to figure out what the costs are.
Through the chair, I think to put this burden on Mr. Gonzalez would be entirely undue. If this is something that he did for just lack of knowledge, a $500 fee to put that burden on top of him, I think it would be just far too far. I mean, how long have you been in business in the city of Sweetwater, Mr. Gonzalez?
7 years ago. 7 years ago.
7 years ago. This is the first and only violation you've ever had. Okay, I want the message to be given very clear that we are open to business. We want to have a clear, an ethical due process, and not that this is any unethical part on the city, but again, to fight over pennies for something like this, I just think it would just be wrong.
Through the chair.
Go ahead.
I agree with Commissioner Villanueva. This is a learning example right here. First and foremost, if this is a code enforcement, we don't have any code enforcement personnel. As Suarez had passed a resolution in the city that we need to have people that are informed, correct? That's why whenever there's a building and zoning, we have the building and zoning official here.
That would be
I
when the
understand
agendas
with
go
code
out
enforcement.
let me explain to you that the attorney's the one that put this on the agenda. I did not put it on there. If the attorney had put it on there, it would have been his responsibility to notify code enforcement to make sure here to represent the city, which he did not do.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Another thing that I want to get to is I work for code enforcement. I know how they do it. This is a very, we'll say, open communication city when it comes to violations. They would have first visited, they would have talked to whoever was sitting behind the desk before they issued any type of violation. There is a responsibility on behalf of the business as well, where if you're a secretary, it might be whatever the case, but you have to let whoever's responsible know that somebody came in and they said, hey, there's a violation here. I'm not saying it's 100% your fault, but your staff should be able to inform you. Usually there's a verbal, which they will follow up anywhere within 2 to 3 days, and then they'll go ahead and issue the actual written warning, unless you call and you say, hey, somebody came by and told me that I was not in compliance. We're very easygoing like that. Sometimes 3 days, 7 days, depending on how busy they are. What I see here is not slipping through the cracks. What I see here is just kicking a can down the road. We have a violation that went out April 6th of 2015. Granted, I understand that there was a process, and again, I agree with the mayor. The only document we can legally look at is the property appraisers and say, hey, this is the owner of the property. So wherever address it is, that's where it goes for certified mail. Secondly, we have, where is it? April 8th of 2016. So they became aware a year later. And then, let me see here. And then they got another notice on September 9th, correct? And they addressed it September 20th. What I'm saying here is just kicking a can down the road with no sense of urgency once things become aware.
But did he, through the chair, did he become aware at that point?
Right. So I think it's important to understand that the property is a series of warehouses. It's a warehouse building with many tenants. There is no central office where the code enforcement inspector could have stopped by and said, "Tell your boss that there's a violation here." So the only notice that they ever received was notice that was sent to a different address, not to them. And they only became aware of that a year later, when that person sent Mr. Gonzalez a fax with a copy of the notice that had been received a year earlier. If you look at the insurance file, We did not kick the can down the road, down the street. As soon as they became aware, they corrected the violation. In fact, as soon as they realized that they needed to get a permit for the restriping, they submitted permits, plans, and to the city, and everything was approved within less than 30 days. So compliance was achieved very quickly once notice was actually made.
Through the chair. Just doing a little query. I Googled the name of your business and I got your address. I didn't go to property appraisal office, I just used Google. And then I Googled the address, or not Google, I actually know the address of where the alleged letter was sent, and that's at the main branch of the Ocean Bank. But your office is not there, right?
His office is in the Ocean Bank building.
In the other building.
In the 782 Northwest 42nd Avenue.
Okay.
Right.
There's two buildings there.
The 133.
Yeah. The letter was sent to 13054
Southwest.
Southwest
Oh, yeah,
133rd.
Southwest.
Right, so the issue is, there's a break in the crack here, and obviously this is the underlining issue that I think we need to remedy. You're paying your occupational license fee on a yearly basis, correct, sir? Good.
782 Northwest 42nd Avenue.
Okay. And I think our offices, our code enforcement, our city clerk's office should really get together and start planning efficiently, because as Commissioner Diaz mentioned, we are, in fact, I think we're kicking the can down the road. I think there's a huge disconnect here. I believe that our code enforcement did their job, but unfortunately, the way the system is created, you never got a warning. You never got a notice of violation. And then all of a sudden, you get sent a letter that you owe 300 grand. Is that basically what happened?
Yeah, actually, the way it happened, they were doing a refinancing of the property, and the title lawyer noticed that there was a lien on the property. So at that point, we inquired as to why there was a lien. But back in September of 2016, he had been told that there would be a lien placed on the property, and he wrote a letter to the city asking that the lien be removed and the fines mitigated. So that's when the first request for mitigation came in.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear, and I'll finish. I just want to make it clear. Our code enforcement guys bust their hump, and they do a phenomenal job. And there's not many of them.
Right.
They are stretched thin with a 4 square mile city. I'm sure they did their job, and they did it diligently. But unfortunately, the way the system is, I think it just crept through the cracks. So I still stand by my original motion.
Go ahead.
Madam President, just a couple of quick things to clarify the record. There's been no breach in the process. The first time that Mr. Mayol brought this issue to my attention, I directed him to staff, because there is a mitigation of fines and liens process in place. He went through that. I'm not exactly clear why he did not get a response, and he kept touching bases with me, and even to the extent that he says, listen, even 10% will be detrimental and harmful to my client. And I said, well, the only one that can go below that is the commission. The mitigation process that you're following, the mayor can only mitigate down to 10%. The only one is the commission. At that point, he requested to appear before you, and here you are. When I placed this item on the agenda at the request of Mr. Mayol, Mr. Mayor, code enforcement does not report to me, and I assume that yourself and your staff read the agenda to see what items are there and what may pertain to them as staff or their duties. But keeping this in mind, that next time they may not appear, I will make sure that I contact them as a courtesy. With that, Madam President, I believe you have a motion.
Through
I'm
the
not
chair.
certain if you have a second.
Through the chair, before we move on real quick, Mr. Mayor, I would be more than happy to entertain an ordinance that would allow you to go down to 2.5% or even less.
It can't even really be done today. It has to be done through an amendment. It's going to go through 2 readings. I can discuss that afterwards with
Right,
Guada.
right, but that's just-
correct. It really has to be changed.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to draft something under your sponsorship, Commissioner.
Perfect.
I believe you have a motion to mitigate all fines and remove all liens for
Second.
Dolph Mac, and you have a second, Madam President.
Second. Okay, roll call, Madam
Commissioner Duaso,
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz,
Yes.
Commissioner Barreto,
Yes.
Commissioner Holtz Alonso,
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva,
Absolutely, and congratulations, sir.
Commissioner Borrero,
Yes.
President Ñaño.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Thank you so very much.
7-0.
Have a great night. Thank you.
Okay, now we're gonna go back.
Through the chair,
No, go ahead. Bob.
I'm sorry if I can just add one final note, because I like to be, I like to be mitigative. One solution I might propose is, in the event that there are code enforcement violations, when it comes to the second round of the second notice, maybe we can entertain sending that notice to both the address that's located on the property appraiser's website and Sunbiz, to ensure that, they do receive notification. Just a proposal.
Okay, we're gonna go with B. An ordinance of the City of Sweetwater City Commission amending Chapter 2 of the Code entitled Administration, amending Chapter 34 titled Environment, providing severability, inclusion in the code, and providing for an effective date, second reading, and second public hearing. Gonna open the hearing. If anybody wants to come forward? No? So we're closing. So the hearing's closed, so. Okay, we
Through the
have
chair?
a motion?
Through the chair?
Well,
Yeah, I was gonna put the motion.
yeah, well, I did.
You did? Okay,
Yeah, I
motion,
make-
and second by,
Well,
Commissioner
Vote.
Barreto? Yes.
Yes.
Can you have the city attorney give us his opinion on this, please?
My legal opinion in what respect, Commissioner?
On this item?
The item is legally sufficient. It was requested by administration in order to deal with instances where garbage is placed in the public rights-of-way that may contain, where it sometimes contains items that may be harmful to the public in general, perhaps glass, and other
Human
such
waste.
debris. At that point, the existing fine is only $100, and the administration feels that increasing the fine to $500 in instances where harmful items are placed in the public right-of-way as garbage, that a higher fine would be a better deterrent for such actions.
Through the chair.
That's-
All right.
How are we going to enforce this?
Through code compliance.
It's not necessarily the homeowner's trash most of the time.
Let's say in the case if it's not a homeowner's trash, it's normally a tenant's house. It's the tenant's responsibility. It happened several times now in the last couple of months where you've either had a homeowner or a tenant, rather than placing their, it's called collective waste, their kitchen waste, rather than placing it in the green containers, they just put it in piles in front of the house, and that's what created this amendment here. It wasn't something that was illegally dumped, but actually the homeowners that were doing it. And we didn't have any vehicle for enforcement. All that code compliance was able to do really was ask them, go and knock on their door and ask them to pick it up. This will be a component that if there is repeat violators, they will actually get fined for it.
In my experience as code compliance here, I have personally seen at times other people from, not municipalities, but contractors doing work in other places and then just bringing it here and dumping it wherever they saw fit.
Correct, and that normally will happen with the landscaping waste and everything.
Right. So I don't want to get into a situation where we knock on somebody's door and say, hey, here's your fine for $500 for the first time, and the guy's going to say, hey, this wasn't me.
Correct. They can always appeal it, just like most people do and stuff like that. You've got a lot of landscapers in the city that say that they're not dumping waste in front of their house, yet there's waste every single week, and what a coincidence, they run a landscaping business.
Right.
Okay.
So through the chair,
And I'm sorry, one last thing.
Finish?
Yeah. Is this a period where it says in the addition for D, where it says health and safety violators of the section shall be fined $500 for the first offense, and that looks like a period, not a comma. So it looks like $1 for second instances, just with 3 trailing zeros.
Should be
I mean, it's a typo, but if it gets amended,
Should be a comma. We can amend it to reflect the
Yes.
comma.
make sure it's a comma. Thank you.
Through the chair.
Go ahead.
So this also removes any requirement for the city to have first issued a warning for that violation?
That's correct.
Okay, roll call, Madam Clerk, please.
Commissioner Diaz?
Yes.
Commissioner Barredo?
Yes.
Commissioner Holmes Alonso?
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Yes.
Commissioner Borrero?
No.
Commissioner Duazo?
Yes.
President Ñaño?
Yes.
As amended.
As amended.
As amended.
Motion passes 6-1.
Okay, now we're gonna go to C. An ordinance creating amnesty period, creating a limit exception from civil penalties and liens for
Move.
building code violation of the homeowner's compliance with the building code and additional criteria providing severability, inclusion in the code as an effective day, second reading. Commissioner Jose Alonso, I'm gonna open for public hearings. Okay, so we're closing the public hearing.
Move.
Second.
Okay, we have Commissioner
Commissioner Villanueva and Commissioner
Villanueva,
Barredo.
second by Commissioner Pereira. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Barredo?
Yes.
Commissioner Holmes Alonso?
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Absolutely.
Commissioner Borrero?
Yes.
Commissioner Duazo?
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz?
Yes, but before anybody does this, they need to be fully aware of all the requirements set forth by this resolution. It's not go in and say, hey, give me what I've installed this illegally and I want to get it updated. No, there's a series of things that needs to go in to get this approved by the city. But yes,
President Ñaño?
Yes.
Okay. Ordinance passes 7-0.
An ordinance of the, that's D, an ordinance of the City of Stillwater, Florida, establishing the moratorium or wireless communication facility and telecommunications tower and antennas in public rights of way for a period not to exceed 120 days, providing for legislative finding, intent, and purpose, providing for conflict, providing for repealer, complying for severability, complying for an effective date. Mayor Lopez, first reading.
Through the chair, I have Eric Gomez, our city engineer, here to speak on behalf of this item.
Okay, good evening, Commissioners. Basically, what's happening here is, as your city engineer, I'm the one who basically approves all the different utility companies that come in and want to install their, in this case, their communication cables, whether on our current pole, let's say Dade County poles, or in certain cases FPNL poles and so forth. What's happening is there's several telecommunication companies now that have been coming within the last year, 2 years. And just to name a few, there's Sprint, there's Crown Castle, there's AT&T, there's Verizon, there's Mobilite, and that's just a few. And basically what's happening here, and based on the state legislation, is this HB 687 is what they want to do, is be able to come in and install their communication system in our right-of-way on certain poles that may belong to us, or let's say may belong to FPNL, or even some of the poles that belong to AT&T, that's typically the case in our city, that the poles are one of those two companies typically, just to say the least. It belongs to them. But the issue and the reason why I'm here and why I'm requesting this moratorium, it's not just for them to come and install or allowing them to install their utilities on these poles, but the issue that I'm also having in the public works area is they want to put in other poles, new poles in our city, and then some of these poles are 40 feet, some of them are 75 feet, and if you've driven around our city, we have issues already with poles that should be should have been taken out. For example, a wood pole will be in one side on the sidewalk, and then another pole will be right there, a concrete pole that belongs to FPL, and it hasn't been removed yet. So what I'm trying to avoid here is having several poles being put up just because there's a state legislation, that has been passed that allows them to just come in and put their poles wherever they want. And I think that if we allow them to do that, then we're going to be having poles all over the place, and it's going to become, an eyesore and also a nuisance just for the residents and even for the pedestrians, walking in the right of way, for example. So what I'd like to do is have this moratorium be passed so that we can come up with a process on, where we will allow these new poles to be put in, and also what would be the process to do that, because we can't just let them come in and say, okay, you want to put this pole right here, just let them put it right in front of, let's say, the new building of the Commons, the University Towers, yeah, and you just put this big 75-foot pole there, and, it's just like, when is this going to finish?
What are we going to do about those poles that are falling and they haven't done anything also in my street, my block?
Mm-hmm.
And I've been talking to FPL for a long time, and AT&T and Comcast, and they haven't done anything about it. What happens if they have the concrete poles and they have the wood, they have double ones, and they argue between each other that AT&T says that they had to actually put it on the concrete and they hasn't done it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to do anymore, because basically we're trying to negotiate with them, and they're not doing nothing about it.
No, and I agree. I have a list of like 40 locations just like that of issues, and what I'd like to do up to a point is say basically we're not going to allow you to install any other utility until you start showing action of removing certain poles, and it's a process, and it's frustrating.
We have one pole. I don't know exactly if it's on
110 between 5 and 6.
110 that is falling.
Between 5 and
I have
6.
a picture. It's falling from Irene. It's
Yeah,
falling.
well, yeah, and that one, I know I'm aware of that one, and that one, as a matter of fact, I even sent it to the mayor, that, and basically saying, listen, this is an issue, it has to be remedied, and they said they would jump on it immediately, but I am aware of that one specifically.
If I may, through the chair, this has been an ongoing situation forever, ever and a day. One of the solutions that Eric and I were discussing a couple of months ago was what Eric was just saying, that not allow them to put any other poles until they vacate all the poles that they should have done years ago. Ralph was just actually whispering in my ear that what if we find them for not doing it? I think that really the best process is probably not allow them to do any new installation of poles when they have to do it until they vacate all the other poles.
Through the chair.
It's really a difficult situation to figure out how to do it right now, because nobody really wants to accept responsibility when we continue to give them a list. These are your poles, so you still have to pull out. No, those aren't our poles. But, well, they could actually be our poles, but this carrier says that the other carrier still has equipment, and they can't remove it. Meanwhile, so it's...
I have been dealing with the 3 of them, and it's the same issue.
Through the chair.
This has been going on for a long time.
We could always just contract somebody to do it, send them a letter and say, hey, unless you guys figure it out and get it done, we're going to hire somebody and just backcharge it. There are countless contractors out there that are approved by FPL, by Comcast, and by AT&T to do relocations. And if that's the case, I would suggest that that's the course that we take and just backcharge them.
Through the chair.
I know it's hard because
that actually may not be a bad...
I know it's not a bad idea. That's what I used to say.
Yeah, that may not be a bad idea, and then we just have to create the vehicle to... And then probably at the time it's... No?
You can't...
Through the chair.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Commissioner Diaz. We can absolutely issue fines. We can absolutely contract an organization to pick the pole off the ground, pick the lines, connect the lines. We are legislators. The frustrations that as residents and commissioners, I'm sick and tired of contacting FPL. I don't get anywhere with FPL. I don't know if anybody else gets anywhere with FPL, but I sure as heck don't. I don't get anywhere with FPL, AT&T, Comcast, and it's to a point to where it's comical. Residents contact us and say, look at this pole. It's now a safety hazard. That pole on 110 between 5 and 6 at any given moment is about to give way God forbid, lands on a kid, now we have live wires on the ground, and as legislators, we're sitting here saying, we're sick and tired of contacting FPL.
Yes.
So I would support anything that will be drafted. And Commissioner Diaz said it. I was dying this, which is why I was so emphatic on saying through the chair, because that's exactly what I've been talking about or thinking about. So I would love to now be able to contact these companies and say, by the way, your pole is no longer there. Here is a fine by our city. And if we can look at the legal language to do that, I'm sure that, just being professionally ethical, Commissioner Diaz said it first. I will love to back that legislation. But that was just the first thing. The second thing is, while you're looking at implementing policy is what you're looking at. I would definitely contact the city of West Miami because they were having a similar issue. They were having this issue roughly about 1.5 years ago, where they had a windstorm, and they were having an issue, and an organization went in there, and they had a battle, so to speak. So I know West Miami, Coral Gables is doing something similar, even though they're having their own issues now with hurricanes. But as you go implementing policy, you've already identified these 40 poles.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure.
So while you're implementing policy, can you also recommend to to the commission on a future legislative item that we can vote upon and say, these are the poles, this is what we want to remove, this is our most responsive bidder, we did an RFP, and we're going to move forward, we're going to start sanctioning and fining these organizations. Can you do that?
Through the chair, I know it's a little bit difficult simply because they have their easements and they own it.
It's a separate issue. We're not talking just placement of facilities in the right of way. This deals with the communication services tax and the placement of communication facilities in the rights of way. As such, when the state did an overhaul of the taxation of communication services back in the early 2000s, governments throughout the state, local governments throughout the state, basically, rather than have, I'm sorry?
May I please?
He's sick. He needs to leave. Commissioner also have to be excused.
Sure.
As I was saying,
Says, I'm sorry.
the framework that local governments dealt with communication facilities and communication services providers in the past was through franchise agreements. All of that went away, and in its place, you have the communication services tax, where all communication services providers tax communication services, collect those taxes and remit to the state. The state, in turn, remits a portion to local governments. As part of that framework, the agreement at that time basically incorporated the placement of communication facilities in the rights of way without local government infringement. So we're dealing with a framework where in exchange to the receipt of the communication tax revenue, that we openly allow communicate with some criteria, obviously. We allow communication services providers to place communication facilities in the rights of way. So some of the impositions that are being discussed here may be problematic and may run afoul of the communication services tax legislation. What you have now is you're having a shift in technology. Now, what's happening is, in the communication services tax legislation, and it contemplates a shift in technology. In other words, communication facilities today may look completely different 10 years from now. So some of the regulation framework that you have in place today may not work with new technology. And this is what we're encountering now, hence the moratorium. This is a problem that is taking place throughout the state. And as such, many local governments are implementing similar moratoriums. so that we can uniformly have some regulatory scheme to deal not only with the new technology, but the problem that it's that has surfaced with multiple communication facilities and multiple poles. So the 120 days, we hope that's enough time to come up with the proper framework, and I believe and make sure some of the things that have been said here can be put into that legislation, such as not allowing any new permits until you complete certain work. Excuse me, certain work that has been delineated by staff in order to move forward with the placement of communication facilities. This is a work in progress, frankly, and we just got to look at the proper framework to regulate those that new technology and its placement in the right of way, and make sure that we don't run afoul of the communication services tax legislation. So it's a complex issue.
Thank you, sir. Move.
Through the chair, I'm sorry. Would it be possible to amend this to read no towers, but I mean, I don't see a problem with antennas, because antennas, they could just come in and just plug into an existing pole. I don't see a huge problem with those. And that's pretty much the shift that I've seen in construction right now. They'll come in, they'll attach to an existing FPL pole, and just, hey, AT&T's there now.
Commissioner, I would suggest to leave the item as is, to give, honestly, staff more latitude. Because if that amendment will basically entail that he cannot prevent them from installing that specific piece of equipment, and to deal with the issues that particular installation may incur. So,
Do we currently have a height restriction in the city or no?
Now we're, I mean, you're talking about the height restriction?
Anything?
No, not for poles. I mean, unless, the only mandate that we have on height would be the FAA.
Buildings.
I mean,
Okay.
But
So
I,
we have-
yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm going to say that we have a motion by
Commissioner Villanueva and
Commissioner
second
and
Commissioner
second by
Barredo.
Barredo.
Through the chair.
Villanueva and Barredo. Go ahead.
One of the things that I want to discuss with Eric before the vote's actually taken is the possibility of actually making a small amendment, and it's really on just the days. The moratorium actually is for 120 days, which is 4 months.
Yeah.
Shouldn't we extend it to 6 months, which would be 180 days, just to give us a little bit more latitude?
That's fine with me. I mean,
You know-
I really prefer 6 months because, I mean, we already have looked at a couple of cities, but, I'd like to.
To have a little bit of latitude
Yeah,
there, rather than
absolutely.
tying yourself, because if having the 180 days to 6 months, we can actually shorten it afterwards.
Yeah.
But rather than having to come
Yeah,
and
come
amend
back
this one,
for an
right.
extension or something.
So if the commission would appease it to make one small amendment, which is to change it from 120 days to 180 days.
Through the chair, just one concern. Does this put us in any sort of a position where we would be in breach of contract with any of these facility providers?
No, this is
franchise fee.
completely within the powers of the city as it attempts to come up with policy to regulate this new technology. No, if it goes on indefinitely, you could have an issue as far as an infringement upon the placement of communication facilities in the right of way. But as of now, it's a finite term, and I don't see an issue with that.
Roll call, Madam Clerk, please. 6 months?
I need a motion actually to amend it.
Amended. Yes, a
Your
motion to amend.
amendment
It's
for
gonna be
6
all- Right, that's right, because requested 6 months.
Yes,
Correct.
Okay.
So Commissioner Barredo makes a motion to
Amendment for
amend.
6 months.
Through the chair.
Go ahead.
Eric, what's a reasonable time frame that you have to come up with a framework? I know we're looking at other cities, but is there something that we just do? Because, to be honest, our charter and our resolutions don't match with.
Anything.
Many other cities out there.
absolutely. I mean, and it's a good question, but the problem it's not just for new poles. I mean, to be honest with you, and I'll just give you one detail. For example, one thing I'd like to talk to our planner or see what our master plan is, because if we have one, because we have to come up
Me
with a
too.
master plan as well.
I wanna see
mean,
it too.
And not just that, because okay, where would we want to put these facilities if we're going to allow them? And who? I mean, because then would it be fair to just allow one company, one entity, and so those are things that I don't have the answers to yet, and I have to get to the details. But that's just, and to be honest with you, I just.
Give me milestones. Give me a 30, 60, 90, and 100%. When do you think we'll be able to come up with something?
I like
And
to
don't
say,
tell me 100%.
No, I mean, I'd like to say a draft we should be able to give you, within 60 days.
Okay.
Rocco?
I mean, but then again, that's just a draft and still trying to, you know, like a 30%, like let's say if you were talking about construction drawings or you know, something like that to that effect, but, you know.
Okay, I'm gonna second the
You're
motion
gonna
for
second
the
the
6
motion.
months. So roll call, Madam Clerk, please.
Commissioner Holt Alonso,
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva,
Yes.
Commissioner Borrero,
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz,
Yes.
Commissioner Barreto,
Yes.
President Ñaño.
Yes, as amended.
Okay, passes on first reading,
That's the first
6-0.
Now we're going to F. A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Stillwater, Florida, authorizing the mayor to reject all bids and award a contract to JVA Engineering for the Phase 2B North Stormwater Improvement Project, authorizing the expenditure of funds and providing an effective date. Mayor Lopez.
Through the chair, this is a process that's been readily done here with any of the drainage projects that all applicants had problems with their applications. It's still, Robert will go a little bit more into detail. It's still going with the most responsible bidder within the applicants, but rejecting them all because none of them were 100% correct.
Exactly. In a sense, we had 6 submittals on September 1st, which we opened pursuant to an open competitive bid for Phase 2 North of drainage improvements. And everybody, all of the 6 were characterized as similarly non-responsive, but due to, you know, what could be said as our minor details, everything was, you know, an affidavit here, an affidavit there. And also, let me note that this procurement document is quite a gargantuan, woolly mammoth of a document. It's 500 pages plus. At any rate, there was nothing in the review that was deemed to be material. In other words, anything wrong with the numbers, any omissions that were major. Yeah, the difference, JVA Engineering, for anybody who's been around, is a highly reputable firm. They're all over the place. That's unquestionable. And, you know, just between bidders 1 and 2, there's $62,116 in difference. So our recommendation is, yes, to reject everybody and take JVA so we can get this show on the road. There is funding, and we do have, you know, timelines to follow here. Sending this all out again, you know, would be close to detrimental.
Through the
So we
chair.
recommend it.
Robert, I hear what you're saying, Mr. Mayor, I hear what you're saying. I just don't like when we're gonna throw out all the bids. How long has this RFP or RFQ been out?
This was put out on or about July. They took about a couple of months to respond, it's standard procedure. It was opened on September 1st, went through the rating process, and here we are in October.
So basically 3 months.
Right, and for a project of this magnitude, you do allow for 6 to 8 weeks for them to respond. This isn't, you know, tally up $2,000.
How many people
6
applied?
firms.
6 firms, and they are?
Let's see.
And
J-
have any of the firms that applied been blacklisted previously?
No. JVA Engineering, that was the lowest one. American Pipeline Construction, and this is all attached to everybody's agenda, was number 2. C&W Pipeline, Inc., Florida Engineering and Development Corp., that's number 4. Metro Express, Inc., number 5. And V Engineering and Consulting Corporation was number 6.
Thank you, Robert. And what's the total cost of this project?
The total estimate of this project is around $842,000, hard and soft.
And how much of it is a matching grant?
There's 4 total grants, and all of them essentially match each other, except for GOB, which doesn't require a match.
So we're not paying this. How much is the city of Sweetwater paying from its coffers for this project?
$0.
Other than grant.
$0. Nothing matched from general. They all, we have a great mix of state and federal, so they all match each other.
Right.
This is 100% grant funded.
Thank you. I don't like ever rejecting any bid because I like to be as transparent as possible. But the fact that we did have a bid process kind of calms me down.
Yeah, we're rejecting all. The city always reserves the right to reject and to waive minor omissions. There is nothing abnormal about this. Like I'm saying, we do have timelines for certain grants, and, everything has to fall into place, and all, this is a complex project, and, let's break ground on this. Let's keep on fixing drainage.
Through the chair.
Thank you, Robert.
So the city does obviously reserve the right to reject all bids. We don't have to enter into a contract with them. But with these grants, there are very narrowly defined procurement procedures that you have to abide by in order to actually be able to utilize the funds to pay for those expenditures. So my first question is, what is the funding source that is going to pay, or what are the funding sources that are going to pay for this contract?
All right, acronym soup. DEP, CDBG, and GOB.
Okay, have you obtained written authority from each of these three funding sources that you are allowed to select this firm based on this rationale?
Yes.
You have that written authority?
Yes.
Okay.
GOB, and you know this, it says you use your own procedure. So does the state. CDBG just says lowest. So this is consistent, actually, with CDBG, who's the most nitpicky.
Right, but in this case, you are rejecting all bids. My worry is that you will leave open on the table an opportunity for one of these vendors to say that their bid was rejected, and you selected a firm outside of procurement policies, outside of a competitive bid. So I don't like the terminology of rejecting all bids. I think to be safer, what you should probably say is you're going to select this firm based on lowest costs, because all of them were non-responsive.
This is the lowest one. We're
No. If I may, through the chair, and Quadra's obviously going to clarify that, but one of the other things that I do want to make a mention, that I thought Robert was going to make mention of this, and he didn't, but before Quadra clarifies this, one of these monies, which is actually the CDBG funds, expire at the end of the year, which is approximately $300,000 of these projects. If we don't expend the monies before the end of the year and apply for reimbursement, we actually lose those $300,000.
right, and that's why I referred to timelines, that all of this, if we go out and rebid, it would be detrimental.
Correct, it'll be detrimental to the project.
And CDBG is the one's pushing us. They're saying you select somebody.
But Quadra will explain that the correct process is to reject
Okay.
all bids and then go with the most responsible
Right.
bidder.
Your question is legal.
Mr. Quadra?
That is the proper posture for the item, because from what I'm understanding is not everyone responded properly to the bid requirements. If that's the case, you couldn't award to anyone, because again, they missed some of those requirements, so you couldn't award it. So your only choice at that point is to reject all bids. You throw the requirements out the window. At that point, you are able to award, in this particular case, to the lowest bidder. But you would, in order to do that, you would have to reject all bids because the bids were defective to begin with.
Okay, I move.
Second.
And second by
Commissioner Diaz.
Commissioner Diaz. Roll call, my friend, please.
Commissioner Villanueva,
Yes.
Commissioner Borrero,
Based on the city attorney's opinion, I'll say yes.
Commissioner Diaz,
Yes.
Commissioner Barrero,
Yes.
Commissioner Holtz Alonso.
Reject.
Yes. President Ñaño.
Yes. Okay, we're gonna go to item G.
Okay. Item passes 6-0.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Sweetwater, Florida, authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with TY Lynn International, authorizing the expenditure of funds, and providing an effective date. Mayor Lopez.
Move.
Second.
Third?
Bye.
Okay, Commissioner Villanueva.
Vaya, Robertico.
Okay.
All right, did anybody want any
No,
elaboration?
no, I don't think so. I don't think we're good on it.
We need to do this to do the project. If we don't do the project. That's all you can.
Go ahead, roll
All
call.
right.
Commissioner Borrero,
Good night.
Commissioner
Yes.
Borrero, yes. Commissioner Diaz.
Yes.
Commissioner Barrero.
Yes.
Commissioner Holtz Alonso. Commissioner Villanueva.
Yes.
President Ñaño.
Yes.
Passes 6-0.
Okay. Now we're going to I. Discussion regarding event sponsored by Commissioner President Yanio, event date December 22nd, 2017. Okay, this is an event that I'm going to be doing for the elderly, the senior center.
Move.
Second. Okay, so, go ahead, Mayor. Roll call.
Before you continue, this event you're gonna have it at the park, ma'am?
Yes.
Are you gonna request, the same as Commissioner Yanni to not have the items, to not be charged basically for the event?
No, I can't because, I mean, we cannot be charged because this is a city event.
I'm just saying, so we're not charged, just to cover it. Because
If the commission approves.
right, so.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying, so let's just.
Exactly, yes, it's just a city event.
So next month, you're gonna place that just so we can approve this, so you don't get charged?
Well, actually, didn't we, did the whole thing, once, when we approved, was it the same day? Yeah, it's an ordinance.
Isn't that, so my question is, do we have to vote upon that on any individual event, or just all commission events sponsored by any commissioner?
No.
Well, actually, it's
Right, you
everyone,
would have to-
individual, you have to request it.
So just to assist you in what you're trying to
Yes.
do, I would recommend that you put that on the next month's agenda item. I don't think anybody's gonna say no to
Because
it.
it's just a discussion.
Because it's just discussion. This is not to waive the fees.
Why, we did it this way?
Let me say this, the item for discussion it's here,
Mhm.
but you may entertain sundry motions. I mean, as long as there's no approval of expenditure of funds
No?
or
So
anything along those
So
lines.
I motion to waive Commissioner Yanio's fees for that event.
Okay, roll call, Madam Clerk.
You gonna have a second?
Second.
Yeah, she already
Well,
has
they
to say.
they did 2, 3.
Right, but those are, every event is
That's every-
individual.
Yes, individual, okay, roll call,
Okay.
Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Diaz,
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Barredo, Commissioner Holmes Alonso,
What was the motion?
Just to approve the event.
No,
I
no.
thought he said
No,
to
my
waive.
motion-
To waive.
Waive.
My motion is to, obviously have the event, is to waive the
Waive
city
the city
fees.
fee.
That way she doesn't get charged the city fees for this elderly event. So it's obviously for the event, but to amend this discussion item and waive any fees. Make
And
sense?
to approve for her
Yes.
to have it in there.
Yes.
I had a question.
Mhm.
When he says the event doesn't cost any money to the city, like an employee, that we need some kind of employee for the event,
Any fees?
well, that's, we have to pay for the employee.
Well, I
No.
mean,
No, we're talking
No,
about
no, no.
the location
The
event.
location, the
How about
location.
the employee on that date?
I think that's a different,
different, yeah.
discussion.
Well, we
Uh,
have to put that on the discussion next time.
Okay, so.
I agree.
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva,
Yes.
Commissioner Borrero,
Was everyone invited?
Yes.
I'm just kidding.
You
Yes.
have to be,
I'm just kidding.
65 and over.
Oh, that's just age discrimination.
President Yanio,
Yes.
Yes. Only if I'm on VIP.
So now we go to J. Discussions regarding the process of certificate of use in the city. Commissioner Barreto.
Okay, so I wanted to have a discussion item based on, some occurrences that I've seen happen in the city in the past. Having worked here for 5 years, I've had, many interactions downstairs on the second floor with Lexus clerk who processes business tax receipts and refers people for certificate of use. And my concern and my worry and something that really breaks my heart is when I see cases where tenants, they pay the first month, last month security deposit for, let's say, rent in a facility and to a landlord, and they pretty much put their life savings, $10,000 into this business, and then go to the city for, their permit for their COU, and are told, hey, wait a minute, this is not allowed over here, and they go back to the landlords and pretty much lose their entire life savings. And at that point, there's nothing that we are able to do to get this owner or this tenant his money back. And we're talking about business owners, small mom and pop businesses, livelihoods here, their life savings. So That's my first question to the mayor is, what is the process for, obtaining the certificate of use? And my second question is, can we entertain some sort of an ordinance that prior to signing a contract with a landlord for filling a vacancy in any space in the city for commercial property, that they are required to sign off on understanding of the process, that their business is an allowable business where they are at, and if not, that we leave it open for reimbursement to the tenant that moved in. So, Mr. Mayor, if you can, real quick, just clarify the process.
The answer number 2 is very simple. No. You can't get involved in the rental process nor try to implement any form of legislation that would require a landlord to return any rents to a tenant if he cannot secure proper licensing. You cannot get involved in that. And I know that it would be illegal to try to pass any legislation to the same form. I apologize for answering it for you, but
You are correct.
no. So it's a big fat no, and it's illegal to pass any form of legislation contrary to it. To try to dwell into number 1, it's actually the tenant's responsibility to do due process. If the person did not do his proper due diligence to make sure that the type of business that he is securing space for, you fall back on the same thing. It's really buyer beware. You were trying to rent a facility for something that was not a permitted use. Want to mention that, Ralph? Ralph is actually mentioning something to me, but which applies to this, but it really is due diligence on the tenant's part. If the tenant was trying to secure a tenant space and paid rent, started a construction process for a business that's not a permitted use, that's really just wrong on his part because he did not do his due diligence.
If I may, Madam President? The issue you have here, for the most part, is that you're dealing with people who, for whatever reason, choose not to have legal representation. And that usually is a result of being penny wise and pound foolish. They don't want to hire a lawyer. No, esos son $1,000, you no pagan un abogado $1,000 para un papelito, that's the attitude they have. But the result comes back to bite them later when it turns out that they've now got a $50,000 problem that could have been avoided with a $1,000 legal fee. Now, the process for this is called a zoning verification letter. And every municipality in the county has it, probably every municipality in the state has it. Durham has it as well. They call it a letter of interpretation. So it's not a zoning verification letter, it's a letter of interpretation. But every department has something like this. You send an email to George Vera, and you say, "Dear Mr. Vera, this is a property I'm interested in leasing. I'm interested in leasing for this term. This is what I want to put up there. I want to put an iron smelting and plastic fabrication plant on 107th Avenue in Flagler." And that comes from George Vera, a letter saying, "No, that's zoned for commercial use. It's not zoned for industrial use. You can't put it there." And then we got that. Or alternatively, yes, you can put your whatever store or thing you wanted to put up there. It's in the letter, and at that point, if you're challenged later by staff, then you've got this paper that says that you could do it, and at that point, it's on staff to make whatever changes or variances will be required. But the procedure is called a zoning verification letter, and the best thing that people can do in entering into business transactions, especially when they're going to sink tens of thousands of dollars, is to get a lawyer to go ahead and do the due diligence. It's one thing to do it yourself, but you're not going to think of these things. They really need to have legal representation. But is there a process in the city? Yes, and it's called a zoning verification letter.
So there's no remedy at that point?
Well, there is no remedy at that point. If at that point if the hypothesis that you're providing is that somebody decides that they're going to put up a business at a certain address and it's not zoned, either because it's not zoned for the use, or if it's a conditional use that the city commission's not inclined to give them, then, and they've already put their money down in advance, that's not a city issue. That's a private issue between the tenant
Civil matter.
and the landlord. It's a civil matter. But at that point, the tenant has committed the mistake. The landlord is completely within his rights to stand on the contract. What you do, if you're going to lease a space, then you get an agreement with the landlord saying, I'm going to lease this space, where I'm going to pay for X number of dollars to hold this space for the 1 or 2 months it's necessary to get the zoning verification letter, and possibly also to ask for a variance, either a use variance or a conditional use, whatever the process would be. You do all that in advance, and then the agreement with the landlord would be one where if you fail to do that, or you're not able to do that, rather, use your best efforts, and you're not able to do that, you get to pull out of the deal. You may at that point have lost 1 or 2 months of the lease because the landlord has to hold the space. But you're not into it for 5 or 10 years, as the alternative would be. But businesses are in business in order to make money. Making money costs money. And there is a cost of doing business associated with everything. One cost of doing business in either renting, leasing, or buying real estate is that you do your due diligence. And as I said, every municipality in the county has a zoning verification letter. I mean, I've done them with Doral, I've done them with West Miami, I've done them at many different places. I've done letters of interpretation through Durham. You can get all this, and usually staff is very eager to help you.
Right. No, I have to agree with you 100%. I mean, it's a private business civil matter, and, if you're going to go through litigation, this Sweetwater is not an interested party in that.
Yeah.
I would just like to see if maybe we can entertain some sort of, barriers, and, before leading up to that point, that we can, put in place to safeguard, because we're talking about a lot of people who don't even speak English, and it's just really disheartening to see that. So I guess maybe the only thing we can do is maybe of entertaining a variance in those instances.
Well, the city is obviously, if a tenant leases a space and then finds out that they can't put up the type of business that they wanted to put up there, a pawn shop, for example, which is a conditional use, and they can't put it up there for whatever reason, because the commission doesn't want any more pawn shops in the area, I'm hard-pressed to imagine what the city could do. Maybe put up neon signs outside saying, don't do this. But other than that, I mean, I'm just being facetious, but I'm hard-pressed to understand what the city can do to keep someone from making an obviously bad deal when when essentially the entire economic system of the United States is based upon buyer beware. And it's especially if you're in business on your own, you're supposed to have. Let me put it this way: if you're making these kinds of mistakes very early on, you shouldn't be in business on your own.
Okay. Well, let me ask this: Can the city? This is a question for our city attorney. Put in place a requirement for a zoning verification letter prior to having engaged in that contract, incumbent upon the landlord?
No.
The Florida Constitution prohibits interference between two private parties, in with respect to a contract. So we are prohibited by the Florida Constitution from entertaining any of the issues you're discussing. It's simply a private contractual matter, and as you heard, in the development and the creation or the startup of a new business, one of the key components is making sure that you comply with all the requirements of the local government where you're going to go ahead and conduct that business. And frankly, the city gets involved at the point where a business owner checks with the city. What do I need to operate this type of business? Can I do it as of right? Can I do it? Or if not, could I do it, and what is the process? That's when the city really gets involved. And with respect to our contractual arrangement between private parties, we really couldn't put any conditions or any triggers, if you will. We would be prohibited from doing that.
And if I can add to the city attorney's position, which I agree with wholeheartedly, were we even to structure something, I can't even imagine what it would look like, but even if we tried to structure something out of the best intentions, you're looking at a circumstance where, quite frankly, no good deed is going to go unpunished. Because of that structure that we put in place to solve a problem that's not the city's, we're going to end up inconveniencing somebody else down the line and costing that person money, and we're going to end up getting sued because of that. With all due, and I understand your issue, and we've had people stand at this dais say, but I pumped $50,000 into a business and now I have to walk away from it. I remember one lady who was near in tears, and we spoke about this. We brainstormed trying to figure out what we could do for her, but we couldn't do anything for her without violating our own laws, which would essentially open us up to, disparate treatment of other similarly situated parties. You can't do that. So I completely understand your position, because there are lots of people who get involved in things like this, and get in over their heads. But at a certain point, everybody who goes into businesses, they have to be big boys, and they have to make their own decisions.
To the chair, just a word of advice: if somebody ever reaches out to you and they say, hey, I want to open up a business in the city of Sweetwater, there's a lot of recourses out there that will help a business start up. FIU has a law clinic on Saturday mornings that if you need legal advice to start up a business, hey, you can go over there and they can help you out. So there are recourses to do it, and I know that sucks. I mean, my parents have been business owners and they've had to sell out, and it happens. But that's the nature of this country.
As a HPIF and SBA, there's a lot of recourses you can do to get some information and some guidance, but due diligence is important. But we cannot implement any form of policy or legislation, any ordinances prohibiting a contractual obligation between a tenant and a landlord.
And we couldn't even identify the parties that are into the contract.
Correct.
at
It's
the beginning
impossible.
anyways. We wouldn't know what they are.
Right, and also, if somebody needs that kind of help, as you know, they can contact the mayor's office, and we have, enough connections out in the community to at least help orient them.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I could say is to, have our administration, whenever they do have, because you guys have direct point of contact, most communication directly with people who are applying for that.
No.
If you know.
No.
Well, more than anyone in the city, you guys do.
No, you're incorrect again. They will apply for a occupational license in the building department, as well as any items that they need inside of the building department for any.
Right.
They don't come to the mayor's office.
I agree with you. All I'm saying is, when you do have that interaction, just to let the future tenant know.
Again, we cannot get involved in what type of business they're going to conduct in business. The only thing you can do is to make sure that it is a business that is allowed in the city, as well as it's a zoning issue don't interfere with it as well.
But I will say this, though, that if you have a prospective business owner who is even a little bit swift, or knows somebody whose uncle once dated someone who was a lawyer, and that person says this, that person will pick up the phone and make 3 different calls. Will probably call the mayor's office, at which point they'll be directed to one of the other 2 locations. We'll call Alexis or possibly Annie in the clerk's office, or we'll call the building department. And in those places, they will get funneled to the building department. Everyone will funnel them to the building department, where they'll be told to ask for a zoning verification letter. That is classically the mechanism that's employed. But again, as the city attorney says, I'm hard pressed to think of a mechanism that we could structure that would actually, adequately anticipate all the parties who would be in a position like this and get warning out to them before they were able to execute a bad contract. At a certain point, this isn't a nanny state.
Right.
People are responsible for
The
their own
procedures are in place. I don't want to beat a dead horse here, guys. I just wanted to entertain the discussion to see if there's anything else that we can do. But at this point, the only thing we can do is what we've been doing, which is, education of the process, and it's a business venture.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna go to L. A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Stillwater, Florida, approving the expenditure of $12,493.50 for the purchase of a Lucky 2 100p 38 key unit from Parker System and providing an effective date. Mayor
Move.
Lopez.
I mean, we've already talked about this ad nauseam.
Yeah.
Move.
Parking is a huge commodity in the city, and it's a way of preventing that only customers are using the parking spaces rather than long-term visitors.
What's the look to 100B 38 key? What is that?
It's a parking meter kiosk,
Oh, one of those that you have downstairs?
correct.
Second.
Okay, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Barredo?
Yes.
Commissioner Holtz Alonso?
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Yes.
Commissioner Borrero?
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz?
Yes.
President Ñaño?
Yes.
Okay, 6-0.
Now we're going to item B. Consent agenda. A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Stillwater, Florida, authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection to fund completion of the Phase 2B North Stormwater Improvements Project and provided an effective date. Mayor Lopez.
Move.
Second.
Roll call. You don't need to
Great
vote.
choices.
Great
Very good
choice.
decision. It's just accepting a grant. You can leave it if you want.
Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Holtz Alonso?
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Yes.
Commissioner Borrero?
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz?
Yes.
Commissioner Barredo? President Ñaño?
Yes.
Resolution passes 6-0.
Okay, we're gonna go down to C. A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Stillwater, Florida, authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Comcast Business for Internet Services.
But these were already approved in the Comcast,
Yeah, that
in the
It was
consent
already
agenda.
approved?
Yeah.
In the consent
In the
agenda.
consent
And the
agenda.
consent agenda, that's right. So,
Reports.
oh, good, we could go to reports. Police report, code enforcement report, park and recreation report, maintenance department report, city attorney's report.
Just a couple of items, Madam President. First, there is I wanted to via motion, get authorization from the commission to entertain mitigation, to go to mediation, I'm sorry, mediation, on a potential labor matter. We discussed this some time ago, Mr. Mayor. It's even though this particular individual, Alba, has not received any authorization from the EEOC to go ahead and file a lawsuit, their attorney is reaching out to see whether we could go ahead and at least try to mediate the issue even earlier than a lawsuit. Exactly. We're not entertaining any type of settlement at this point. We are very clear on the lack of merit, if you will, of that particular claim.
To say the least.
Yeah, in good faith, however, he's requesting that, and I'm going to go ahead and sit down with the mayor as to provide basically the parameters to deal with that. Which again, we are very clear on that particular issue. But if the commission doesn't wish to do that, that's fine. That's totally okay. I just cannot take it upon myself to just go to mediation necessarily.
Who's the ex-employee?
I'm sorry?
Who's the ex-employee?
Abraham Abba.
Oh.
Again, there is no lawsuit filed yet. I am, at this point, basically simply bringing to you the request from the attorneys. I will follow through as this commission decides whether you wish me to entertain that. Again, I'm not even asking for any approval of anything. If this commission does not wish me to do that, that's quite okay. It's up to the commission.
Yeah, just the fact that the attorney's asking for some form of mediation at this moment, he knows that he's got no case.
Again, I'm under a duty to ask. You
What is he
can-
claiming through the chair? What's he claiming?
Age discrimination.
He was, okay, disregard my.
Yeah, let's not get into
No,
it.
Yeah,
no,
let's not- let's
disregard.
not-
Let's not get
Got it,
into
thank you
it.
for the heads up.
Yeah.
Right now, I just simply wish to see whether the commission wants me to engage in that or not. And I take my marching orders from the commission, obviously, and also in discussion with the mayor, so.
Through the chair, straw vote for a no?
No.
No?
Yeah, through the chair, it would not be a recommendation
No.
to enter any form of mediation. There is no.
Fair
case.
enough, I've done my job, I bring it up to you, I'll be happy to respond, and they can proceed as they need to proceed. The only other item, commissioners, if you recall, some time ago, you entertained a discussion regarding the Little Abner Foundation and a contract that I believe, or an agreement that I believe goes back to 2014 or 2015.
Yeah.
I've reviewed some of the documentation that I told you I was gonna review, and specifically, it really deals with the agreement itself and one addendum that's part of that agreement. From what I review, it seems like a bona fide agreement. What I really don't have information to assist you is in regards to the reimbursements. I haven't seen the documentation that they are basically utilizing as the means for reimbursement. I know that I may have seen it some time ago in a different capacity. I don't have it. I had sent an email, Mayor, basically asking to see if you had any information relative to those reimbursements. All I can tell you right now is that there is an agreement. The agreement was duly executed by all parties. Relative to what monies are owed, that is specific to a review, and I want to say to some extent audit of the administration to determine that those expenditures that those are bona fide expenditures that deem reimbursement. But I don't have information on that specifically.
The invoices that I sent it over to you.
I understand that. You provided me with that information, but the part that I don't have is basically whether the administration has reviewed that, whether it has audited and basically certified that those invoices are not only bona fide, but that it warrants reimbursement. I don't have that information.
So what is the next step to do for us?
I can
the
go ahead
administration.
and sit down with the administration and go over their findings on regarding those requests for reimbursements.
Through the chair,
Go ahead.
we can always implore the mayor to write a check. Correct?
The agreement basically contemplated some, I don't want to use the word certification, but it contemplated that bona fide documentation showing those expenditures was going to be provided and examined by administration. And at that point, if everything's in order, it contemplated a reimbursement.
But unfortunately, that hasn't been done
Correct.
for whatever reason. And at this point, we're now 3 years in the making, and no monies have been dispersed. So at this point, we need to pay them their money. We could be looking at a lawsuit from the Little Abner Foundation to the City of Sweetwater, which I know the Little Abner Foundation is not going to do that, and I I congratulate you, Madam Chair, for bringing this item up.
Through the chair.
If I may finish. But I think at this point, we know the events that they have done. We know what they spent. They can give us documentation and invoicing up the wazoo for the last 3 years. We owe them the money. So at this point, I think it would behoove us to, and I'll do it on the next meeting if Madam Chair doesn't want to do it, basically to expend these funds to the Labner Foundation in the balance of whatever it is that we're supposed to pay them.
Well, basically, I provide all the invoices.
I heard what you did. Excellent job.
They just gave it to me and I provided you, so we have to just maybe sit down with the administration and go over them.
Remember, from
Whatever
my
needs to be done, I don't know.
from my standpoint, I can tell you that from everything that I looked at, that it appears to be a bona fide agreement. It received legal sufficiency from the city attorney at that time, and it has been duly executed. At this point, it's part of basically the administrative work in confirming those expenditures and whether or not they qualify for reimbursement. That is a call that is not a legal call; it's an administrative call. And so I would have to look, at the administration and I can work with them on if they have any issues, questions regarding that, as to what the amount, if any, for payment that is due. That's what I can tell you. That in of itself is not a legal issue. It's an issue of basically reviewing the documentation and basically establishing if pursuant to the agreement, certain monies are owed.
Through the chair.
If the conditions placed on Little Abner has been met for reimbursement.
Thank you.
I remember Commissioner Igani Ayani also presented a document from the city of Coral Gables, I believe it was, that stated that
No, but that's a resolution that is coming up in the next meeting.
Okay, but have we looked into it? Because I don't know if the administration's sitting on it because it becomes a legal issue as well.
That would be separate and apart because anything that you may do with legislation and not for profits is prospective. In other words, it's as of the time that you enact legislation. This specific issue that we're talking about with Little Abner is for the agreement that was entered, I think, sometime into 2014 or 2015, and activities that took place and that are the subject of a pending reimbursement.
Okay.
Through the chair. I think this entire conversation may actually be moot. If you guys remember the presentation that Raul made when we were discussing our budget items, we allocated $50,000 towards the Little Abner Foundation, and he very clearly stated, I can forget all that. We can waive my claim or my right to any monies. If the city is able to give $50,000 or even $35,000, what he was asking, but we allocated $50,000. So if Mr. City Attorney, can we, encourage them to propose a contract where they get those funds that we allocated and have that as a part of a prescription that they write a release of or a waiver that they waive their right or any claim to any of those previous monies.
That could be accomplished with a majority vote of the commission.
Okay, now this is a situation that we mentioned, the $50,000 that we located for donations. Legally, it has to be.
I don't recall if there was a specific allocation to any entity. I don't recall.
No, it was $50,000 donation, and we mentioned that
a process
legally,
is coming as far as how
a process is
to.
coming, and legally because it happens to another cities where they were confronting legal issues because any
And that's the
non-profit
idea.
organization can come in front of us, and if we
Exactly.
give it to one, we have to give it to all of them.
And the legislative item that's pending is basically a mechanism similar to what's in the city of Doral as to how to allocate funding that has been designated, donations to not-for-profit entities. And I don't recall, I will probably check with the finance director. I don't know if the $50,000 was a direct allocation to the Little Abner. I don't recall that it
It was
was.
for donation.
It was for
The
donation.
third was for donation, right? For donation, yes.
But
Exactly.
to answer your question, Commissioner Pereira, in whatever mechanism, if any funding is provided to Little Abner as a donation, and yes, we can go ahead and basically try to negotiate basically a way out of this agreement and the pending reimbursement with that. I'm sure that we could come up with some kind of resolution in that manner to answer your question.
Through the chair. Yeah, I don't feel comfortable with whatever is happening with Little Abner unless those invoices that were given to you are looked at by the administration. And after they look at those invoices and they say it's okay to have a resolution made that those invoices are kosher, and then I'll look at it. But I don't feel comfortable because I wasn't here when that happened.
Well, Commissioner, I was just asking Ralph while some of this dialogue was going back and forth, because I don't remember this email that supposedly made it to my office. Ralph says that he has not received it either. So if it could
Chair.
just be forwarded, so,
Through the chair.
if you'd like, call me tomorrow, we can discuss this tomorrow.
Will it pass legal muster to go ahead and have them present a contract to the city commission and us pay them for that?
You don't need a contract. There's a contract in place already. The issue is, what is owed as far as reimbursements. That's kind
So
of.
I'm just saying going forward.
Going forward.
Yeah, they presented an item for $50,000 to the city.
Like I answered you before, if the city is willing to allocate $50,000 to Little Abner, I'm sure that as part of that allocation, we can go ahead and basically wipe out this agreement, if you will,
And it would be
terminate it
legally
and make sure
sufficient.
that we get a release.
But my question is that legally sufficient?
That would be legally allowed, yes.
Okay, so I think we have a path forward.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to mayor's report.
A couple of things. Tomorrow morning, I'm having a meeting with Carlos Freyo, the city auditor, where he will be presenting his findings. So we will be scheduling a special meeting too for his audit presentation. So that'll be forthcoming after we meet tomorrow. On another note, I'd like to take this opportunity now to bring Tony Valentine up for ratification. That couple of months ago, we'd said that we were going to wait until the budget process was done and completed. It's obviously been so I'd like to nominate Tony Valentine for Finance Director, if I could, and I'm hoping for unanimous consensus among the commissioners for ratification.
Move.
Second.
Third.
Hey, sir, you got everybody.
Everybody.
I don't think anybody's gonna say no.
Thank you, commissioners. Congratulations, Tony.
Thank you. All in favor?
Very professional.
Good job, Mr. Valentine.
Very
Yes,
professional.
sir.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'm forwarding the email that I sent to you, Tony Valentine, and the city clerk on October 3rd, which I sent you a copy of the resolution and contract and a request for the for reimbursement material.
Okay, perfect. That way I can address it tomorrow morning. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Commissioners report. I have something to say.
I copied you.
I received a phone call from Pastor Ferrer Abner. He apologized that not to be here. I mentioned that he had a question, Mayor. In the past, the permit fee to close the street have been waived. Are we going to do the same thing this year?
I don't believe that we've ever waived permit fees for anybody.
He said that it was waived
Through the
last
chair?
year. Yes,
It was waived last
it
year.
was waived last year.
It was? Okay.
100%. It was
Okay.
waived.
Wait, what?
So Commissioner
permit.
Yanni will make a motion to waive the fees, and I'll second it.
Okay, Ralph was telling me that they have been done in the past, and only the commission has the authority to waive a special event permit fees. The administration does not have the authority to do it.
Okay, so. we
That's
can
all I'm saying
put
that
a-
I've never
Yeah,
done
I
it.
can put a motion, that's what,
Second,
yeah.
to waive the Little Abner fee.
I put a motion to second,
Excellent job,
yes.
Commissioner.
For what event and what date?
For the,
For the Thanksgiving bash.
18.
For Thanksgiving, to
5 p.m.
2017
27,
Thanksgiving bash.
yes. It's gonna be closed from the 112 to 114.
Correct.
Okay, so roll call, Madam Clerk, please.
What are they doing?
They're having
The bash.
Thanksgiving bash.
Thanksgiving
Oh,
bash. Yes,
Not
the
in-
Thanksgiving
I
bash.
don't-
No, this is
Commissioner
something just
Villarreal?
came up.
Yes,
November what?
November 18th.
November 18.
Oh, okay.
Commissioner Borrero?
It's closed on Flagler?
Yes,
Flagler from
112 to 114.
Okay, yes.
Commissioner Diaz?
Yes.
Commissioner Barredo?
Yes.
Commissioner Holtz Alonso?
Yes.
President Ñaño?
Yes, unfortunately, I'm not gonna be here because I'm on vacation, but yes, by
I
all
won't be
means.
here either because I'm on vacation. Enjoy.
Okay, so we have elderly service program report,
Excuse me, elderly?
service program report.
Excuse me, who did this report? I'm sorry. Through the chair.
Go ahead.
Who wrote this report?
That was, Mike that did it, and I checked
Okay.
over it. What's the issue?
What really happened Friday, October the 27th?
Friday, October the 27th.
Yeah? I don't think whatever is written here is the truth.
I will check, what is it? I don't have the paper in my hands.
What happened the last Friday of every month at the senior center?
The birthday parties by yourself?
Yeah. So how come you put sunshine, illness prevention? I didn't see anybody there.
Let me check
Sunshine, illness
let me check the
prevention,
calendar, let me check the calendar with Maite.
Presentation, and then they put party.
That must have been a calendaring issue. If you didn't see him there that day, that was simply a
No, I went
calendaring
there.
mistake.
I went there and they didn't have me for that
Okay.
day.
Well, for the past 2 months, your things were mentioned, so, it's an error, snafus happen.
Okay, I just wanted to know who was.
Right, no, you have been,
writing the report.
your parties have been mentioned, that is a function that's delegated, we'll look into it, and,
And another thing, under commission report, you never talk about your events. She's been
People knows.
feeding the elderly
They
like
know.
twice a month for the past year,
That's
And
okay.
now,
I do it with pleasure.
okay, but you have to talk about it.
Yeah. But that's okay. We're just gonna move on. Special project reports, building and zoning reports, finance report. Nothing, sir? You have nothing? The finance report? Okay, good. City clerk report?
Other than that, the audit will
Only-
be, right.
Yes. Okay. City
It's
clerk
in there,
report? Okay.
passport.
Human resource report, unfinished business.
Madam Chair, before you actually adjourn, I'd like to take this opportunity to pass down these miles pads with the unanimous vote to purchase the vehicles. As you'll notice the seal on top, as you do on the banners, this is the new seal that will be adopted by the police department, which is the accreditation seal with the police seal and the badge. And this is actually going to be the new look for the police vehicles once they get the cars when they get here.
Chief, give it to me. No, but I take another one.
Of course.
I'll take one. Thank you.
That's the new seal that's going to be carried with the police department, and that's going to be the new look for the vehicles once they arrive here in, as I was saying earlier, March or April.
So we have new business. Good of the order. Adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.